Well, nowadays you got to have that confidence because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. What's the story, lads? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. I hope you're all keeping wonderfully well. My name is Aaron and this is the football preview show for the games taking place this weekend in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. Of course, as always, I'm here to give my preview and give my predictions ahead of this weekend's action in both football and hurling. The hurling preview will be out tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. That'll be out tomorrow, where I preview a number of games, of course, taking place in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. But of course, today we're here to discuss the football, so if you are new around here, hit the like button and subscribe. If you are already subscribed, do very much appreciate it. Hit the notifications bell, share this out to as many people as possible. We're getting very close to 1,200 subscribers, so if we can continue along the path towards that, that would be absolutely fantastic. And obviously this weekend's games, hopefully they are fantastic. Hopefully we've something to talk about at the end of this weekend's games, talk about the brilliance of the games, talk about the competitiveness, talk about the brilliant scores, the action, and not championship structures, and not, you know, tier 2 competitions and referees and everything else. And hopefully we can actually get some competitive games in the football championship this weekend, because we are down to 12 teams now that are left in the championship, and you would worry if games don't start getting quite competitive from here. I mean, it's even worse than we thought. It really is. But I am looking at a lot of these games, and I think that there are competitive games there. Look, Donegal Tyrone is a storied rivalry. Armagh and Monaghan are two sides very much on the same playing field. Westmeath and Kildare is going to be a very intriguing game. And Dublin and Meath, whilst Dublin have been very dominant over the past couple of years, I think as Dublin fans, and even some of the Dublin players have said in recent years, we're all kind of waiting for Meath to bring a bit of competitiveness to the Dubs. I think they certainly have the quality to do so. Whether they have the quality to beat Dublin, personally I don't think so, but I'm sure some Meath fans will disagree in the comments down below. But yeah, look, listen, we'll crack straight into it. We'll run through the games, and we will start with Westmeath and Kildare. And this is going to be an interesting game, this one, both Westmeath and Kildare, because, you know, this is one of those games. This could be a real banana skin for Kildare, and I'm kind of looking at it, I'm thinking Westmeath are coming into this game like in tremendous scoring form. They were, you know, although they got beat by Cork in the end quite comfortably in the final, you know, 10 to 15 minutes, they scored 25 points that day. They scored 320 against Laois. I think 212 of that came in the second half against Laois as well. You know, I've been saying this for quite a number of time already this year. Like, Westmeath are one of the more underrated teams, not just in Leinster, but in terms of the entirety of the championship. Now, don't get that twisted. I'm not saying Westmeath are All-Ireland contenders or anything like that, but I think a lot of people look at Meath and Kildare and even the likes of your Derrys as sides that are up and coming. I think a lot of people are overlooking Westmeath because I think they have some fantastic young players coming through, as well as a brilliant, you know, kind of well of experience there. You obviously have your experience in John Heslin, but you've got players like Luke Loughlin and Ronan O'Toole who've really hit the sword this year. You know, Ronan O'Toole looks like a very trickery, very skillful player, weaves in and around of players, creates his own space. Certainly not the finished article yet. You know, he certainly isn't brilliant in front of goal just yet. If he can improve his accuracy in front of goal and in terms of point taken, I think we could be looking at a top class quality footballer. I really do. Fola Ayerinde's come into the side this year as well, and a phenomenal athlete, brilliant at catching the ball. I think we've all seen some of the different clips of his high catches and whatnot as well. So brilliant addition for him coming off the bench. And Kevin McGuire's been very impressive in defence as well. I think the problem for Westmeath going into this game is how are they going to play? You know, are they going to be defensive? Are they going to get men behind the ball? Or are they going to come out and attack? Because I think Jack Cooney has realised, I think he even seen it in the Cork and even in the Laois game, that when this Westmeath team attack, they have the players to do it. They really, really do. They have the players to cause chances. They have the players to really get in the faces of the opposition. And Kildare have been a team that have certainly improved this year. Obviously got promoted to Division 1. In the Offaly game, they just about done enough. They weren't absolutely brilliant, But in saying that, they were efficient and done what they needed to do against an up-and-coming Offaly side. That definitely was another banana skin right there. Jimmy Hyland, has been brilliant so far. Obviously, Dereck Kirwan's been impressive, of course, as well. You obviously have Kevin Flynn at wing back. You have Alex Byrne in the midfield as well, who I think has been fairly impressive. I think the issue for Kildare, though, has been, indiscipline at different stages. Finished the Meath game with 14 men. Finished the Offaly game. They had 13 men, actually, at one stage in the Offaly game. So that is a worry from a Kildare point of view, and Kildare have been struggling to finish games out. Even in the Offaly game, there was a chance for them to kick on and win the game quite comfortably. Offaly looked dead on their feet, and they still allowed Offaly to come back into it. Same in the Meath game as well. In the Cork game, they allowed Cork to close the distance. And look, Kildare still won those 3 games, but we've seen in the Clare game, for example, they weren't so lucky when Clare snatched that victory late on. So, if Westmeath tend to get better as the game goes on, they tend to finish games quite well against Laois, against Down in particular, and Kildare tend to actually struggle in terms of finishing games. So, look, listen, it could go one or two ways. I know Jack O'Connor, the Kildare manager, has spoken openly in the past about his team playing on a much wider pitch, that it suits their style of play. So they'll get a game in Croke Park, and that could definitely probably suit them. And I'm sure they'll obviously want to put right the wrong of when they played in Croke Park last year and they got absolutely hammered by Meath. But I just have a sneaky feeling Westmeath are going to turn them over. I think they have the players to do so. I think they've been building. I think the fact that they got that victory over Laois was a much needed confidence booster. I think when you look at Westmeath's form in general, a 1 point loss to Meath, a game in my opinion that they should have won. It was just indiscipline in the closing stages. Against Mayo, I thought they were brilliant. Again, just a little bit of indiscipline, and that could be the issue. Giving away frees and whatnot could be a problem for Westmeath. But I mean, it's a tough one to call, but I just have a sneaky feeling Westmeath are going to nick it. I think they're coming in as underdogs, which I think suits them. I don't think it will suit Kildare as the favourites. I think Kildare do have defensive issues. They do have indiscipline in there. And I think Westmeath have the forwards. They have the players to really cause problems for Kildare. And I'm going to go with a Westmeath victory, and I'm going to go with them to win by 2 points. We've then got Dublin and Meath taking place in a Leinster senior football semi-final. And what's interesting is this game isn't even taking place it isn't even on RTE, it isn't even on Sky Sports, it isn't even on any of the big television broadcasters. It's actually on GAA Go, which probably says a lot about this rivalry down the years. The fact that this game isn't even on national television. And this game, Dublin and Meath, it was the biggest football and rivalry for a number of years. And you ask many staunch Dublin and staunch Meath supporters, they would say to you that the biggest game of their season, their biggest game for their county every year, is when they play either Dublin or Meath. And unfortunately, that is not the case anymore. Dublin have just gone so far ahead. Meath have gone so down below. And look, listen, maybe the GAA are being smart and putting this game on GAA Go because they know they might make a bit more money from it. But I do think it says a lot that this game is not on national television. And look, in terms of the game itself, I'm not too sure really how to call this one in all honesty, because it wouldn't surprise me if Dublin won this by 15 plus or 20 plus. It also wouldn't surprise me if there was only 6 or 7 points in it. I think a lot will depend on how Dublin come into this game. Will we see Dublin click in a similar way to what they done last year? Because up until then, up until that Leinster final, like, Dublin comfortably beat Westmeath and comfortably beat Laois, but they certainly weren't at their absolute best, and they were kind of similar in some ways to the Wexford game and to Dublin's league form a little bit, where you could tell they weren't at their absolute best, but certainly they had another gear to go up into, and obviously they done that when they played Meath last year and absolutely ripped them to shreds. So if Dublin do that again, I would expect Dublin to win this very comfortably, probably over 10 points anyway, double digits. But look, listen, I think a lot will depend on how Meath approach this game as well, because in 2019, Meath were actually quite defensive that day, and in the first half, they actually done a brilliant job. They slowed Dublin down very, very well. I don't think Dublin scored, well, neither side scored actually until about 20 minutes. I think a lot of people forget it was quite a bizarre game indeed. Dublin obviously kicked on to another level in the second half, steamrolled Meath, won it very, very comfortably. The second half, or the second game, I should say, and the other game in 2020, the game last year, Meath went all-out attack. They pressed up on Dublin's kickouts. They ran at Dublin. They went toe-to-toe with them, and they got absolutely blown away. And unfortunately, that is generally what happens if you go toe-to-toe with Dublin, because Dublin just have so much quality. Now, in that game last year, Stephen Cluxton was unbelievable with his kickouts. He picked out Con O'Callaghan a number of times, picked out Brian Fenton, and it was a common theme for Dublin where they just floated balls over Meath's midfield and they were true on goal, 80 to 90% of the time. They were fisting points over the bar, they were scoring goals. It was just, Meath couldn't get anywhere near them. It was like men versus boys. So what are we going to see in this game? Are we going to see Meath do the same? I think they can't do the same. They can't go toe-to-toe with Dublin in the exact same way they done last year. Otherwise, they'll get blown away again. They need to have the balance. They need to have the balance between being a bit defensive, keeping men behind the ball, and breaking with pace. And I'll be interested to see what kind of game plan Andy McEntee has going into this game, because I think this is a very important game for Meath football. I think they need to show that they're not the whipping boys of Leinster. They're not going to get beat by 15, 20 points against the Dubs, that they are a good team, because they have the quality to do so. Against Longford, they were very, very impressive. I love the way they moved the ball at different stages in the game. Brian McMahon coming into the team looked very impressive. James Connellan coming off the bench getting a goal. Brian Menton looked very impressive as well. Cathal Hickey, obviously at wing back, has been a revelation for Meath so far this year. So they have the players to be competitive, and I think with Meath in particular, one thing I've noticed is that when it's going right, it looks brilliant. Wicklow last year, Kildare last year, Longford this year. But when it's going wrong and when it's going badly, it looks really bad. The Kildare game, for example, they only hit 6 points after about 60 minutes until the final 10 minutes when, they went on a bit of a flurry then, but Kildare were down to 14 men. And against Dublin last year, it just looked very bad. So look, listen, Meath will need to perform. They'll need to show up in terms of shooting as well. Their shooting was really poor in that game last year. Jordan Morris is obviously a top-class player, and certainly Meath will need to get the best out of him. So, look, I'm going to go with Dublin to win it by 9 points. I still don't think Dublin are at their absolute best yet, and I don't think we'll see the best from Dublin until the Leinster final. There are some weird things going on with Dublin behind the scenes at the moment. No Stephen Cluxton, Keane O'Sullivan's retired, Eric Lowndes is retired. There's injuries in there with Johnny Cooper, Owen Merchant. So Dublin's defensive back line is a little frail, and Meath's biggest threat is going forward and goals. So, Meath could potentially cause a couple of problems here, but I am going to go with Dublin to win it by 9 points. That obviously leaves Donegal against Tyrone and Armagh versus Monaghan in the Ulster Championship. Donegal versus Tyrone, first of all. I mean, this is a game that literally you could split a knife through butter and you wouldn't still be able to get the outcome between these two teams, because this has been a very close battle down the years. And Donegal, actually, to be fair to them, have gotten the better over Tyrone, on a number of occasions actually in recent seasons. They obviously, of course, won the league game earlier in the year. They obviously beat them in the championship last year, beat them in the league last year as well. So Donegal do seem to have Tyrone's number very much at the moment. They seem to find a way to beat Tyrone. They seem to find a way to get their matchups right. Normally the likes of Michael Murphy and Paddy McBrearty have brilliant games against Tyrone. And obviously Michael Langan has been in tremendous form so far this year. Thought he was brilliant in the game versus Derry. Obviously Paddy McBrearty got all the plaudits for that last minute point, but I think Michael Langan was tremendous. As for Tyrone, I mean, how fit is Cathal McShane going to be? Do they start him? Because this is obviously a huge game for Tyrone. This is a game that if they win this, I would fancy them to go on to win the Ulster Championship, and then you're talking about an All-Ireland semi-final. So Cathal McShane, this is a huge game for him. If he starts, this is a huge game for Tyrone. And to be fair, he didn't have that match sharpness in the last game. But he still kicked a couple of points and was still actually very impressive. And for a player that's had the injury that he's had and been out for over a year, fair play to him. He looked very good. He really did. Paul Donaghy's looked impressive at different times. And obviously Darren McCurry, what can you say about him? The Dazzler himself. He has been in phenomenal form this year. Probably Tyrone's best player so far this year. So, it's been very close between these two down the years. You could see a game go to extra time. Would the fact that Donegal were really made work for the Derry game, they really had to work for that. They had to produce in the final 5 to 10 minutes, where Tyrone probably had another gear to go up on in the Cavan game. Could that maybe suit Tyrone, or maybe could it even suit Donegal, because they'll come in, maybe a little bit more match sharpness? I don't really know. It's going to be an interesting one. It's a hard one to call. But Donegal have had Tyrone's number in the past couple of years. And I just haven't seen enough for Tyrone to turn it around. In particular, they haven't looked brilliant this year. They still look like a team that's maybe a year or two short of potentially being a serious All-Ireland contender. So I'm going to go with Donegal to get the victory and win it by 2. The other Ulster semi-final sees Armagh going up against Monaghan, and this game is at Park Esler. Yeah, look, listen, I mean, Armagh, this is really now where it counts, isn't it? This is where, they looked very impressive in the league. Obviously stayed in Division 1 quite comfortably in the end. Only lost one of their 4 games, which was obviously against Tyrone. They've certainly been making strides this year. They really, really have. And obviously, Rian O'Neill and Oisin O'Neill have been two of their top players in recent years. But the likes of Aidan Forker in defence, Stephen Campbell, Rory Grugan's looked very good this year as well. Jamar Hall is a very good link man in that team, in that attack. So Armagh have certainly made a lot of progress this year, and this is now where it counts. This is now where they need to show that they are contenders for Ulster, that they can get to an Ulster final, and that they can be competitive within this province and potentially for, not necessarily for an All-Ireland, that's a step too soon, but that they're on the right track. And this is the year for them to do so. Monaghan, on the other hand side of things, they're the type of team that every time you think that they'll go away, every time you think they're going to be beat and they're going to lose, and they're going to go away from Division 1, they seem to find the answer. And these are the type of games where Monaghan can sometimes slip up, a little bit, and also it's also where they can turn up and be brilliant. So it's such a hard one to call with Monaghan. And Conor McManus obviously with a potential injury. I was hearing during the week that injury mightn't be as bad as first expected. And obviously Monaghan are keeping their cards quite close to their chest, because obviously they don't want to give away whether he'd be starting or not. It wouldn't surprise me if he wasn't named in the starting 15 and then was called on just before the start of the game. So it's going to be an interesting one to see what the story is with Conor McManus, whether he'll start. I mean, apparently he was on crutches at half-time in the Armagh game. So if he was on crutches, I'd be very surprised or the Fermanagh game, I should say. I'd be very surprised to see him start. But we'll have to obviously wait and see what happens there. In terms of this game itself, look, listen, Armagh have been very impressive so far this year, and I've backed them to win the Ulster Championship. Did anything change having watched the Antrim game? I mean, a little bit loose at different times defensively. That game was probably a little bit closer than people expected. Armagh certainly have a very interesting way of playing, the way they just win the ball quickly and break with long balls up to the likes of Rian O'Neill or Oisin O'Neill. I think in the Antrim game, though, as they very much said it on BBC at half-time, floating those long, aimless balls up there without really any purpose at different times was a little bit worrying. And going up against Monaghan, who certainly have more experience with that kind of thing, they need to be precise with that. And they can't just give away possession as needlessly as they did in the Antrim game at times, because Monaghan will punish you with Darren Hughes. If Conor McManus does start, Jack McCarron, Conor McCarthy, Aaron Mulligan, guys like these, they will punish Armagh, and they have kickers that can kick from distance, which Antrim didn't have. So I think Monaghan are going to push Armagh very, very closely. And you know what? I think this is going to penalties. I really do. I think this is going to penalties, and I think Armagh will win it on penalties. But yeah, I'm going to say finally, this is the first penalty shootout in Gaelic football. I've been predicting we're going to have one. I don't know, maybe we won't, but I'm going to say penalties. And yeah, I'm going to say Armagh get the victory. Anyway, lads, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. My name is Aaron, and I'll see you in the next one.